what's up everybody? Chad Kalick here, and welcome back to the In a Crowded Room podcast, where on this episode, we're going to be talking about a few very bizarre experiences that I had on Paranormal State that have often left me wondering if I experienced what is known as the Mandela Effect, or even possibly like the multiverse or something. Some very weird experiences, and one of them was actually brought to my attention by Ryan about a year ago when we were discussing the IM6 case. And it has been on my mind since. I've thought about it often, and I've even rewatched some footage to try to understand what he told me, which I will share that footage with you. But before we get into that, for those of you that are into the ghostly side of what I do, the paranormal investigation world, on August 16th, if you would like to join me just outside of San Antonio, Texas, at the Yorktown Asylum for an overnight investigation. Yorktown is awesome. I have had many bizarre experiences there, and I invite you all to join me. If you want tickets to this event, there are a few left. You can get them by clicking the link in the description box below. Once again, that is August 16th at the Yorktown Asylum. With that being said, let's talk about the IM6 case on Paranormal State. Like I said, about a year ago, Ryan and I went over this case in detail on an episode here of the In a Crowded Room podcast. So I will link that at the end of this podcast as well, if you want to check it out. But everything about that case was bizarre. We talked a lot about the fact that whenever you do demonic cases, there is a weirdness that overcomes everybody, and not just investigators or those that are allegedly afflicted by the results of a demonic possession, but the crew, everybody there. It's just not a fun environment. And things were really weird. And I think a lot of people forget that that case started out in Kentucky. And we left a case in the middle of it because Ryan had received a phone call from Laura Mooney's mother saying that she was going to die that night. And I heard the message. It was creepy. I mean, I did not envy the position that he was in after getting that phone call. It was really weird. But there are things about that case that I definitely remember, like, intricate details. And then there are things that I don't. And something Ryan pointed out to me that really blew my mind. I still today don't understand what exactly happened. Sorry, there was a loud car that just drove by here. It's important to note that I absolutely remember working with Katrina on that case. In fact, the first time I had ever gone out with her to work on like historical research on a case was during the IM6 case. Because usually how it works is they don't tell me anything about the clients, the case, like nothing. I just would get a call saying, hey, we need you for an investigation. And I would fly to that city. Right before dead time is the first time anybody would really talk to me about the case. And they would literally just say, this is where you're going to be. If there's anything that I needed to worry about or to look out for, they would tell me. And then it was my job to just experience what I experienced and then just report that back. I often didn't want to know anything or as little information as I could, just because it's very easy to be influenced once you know something. So I was always like, just point me to the room I got to go to, let me know what I got to do. And that was my job on Paranormal State when I wasn't directing. But on that case, because it was a demonic case, I did know about the case because I saw the episode, the first episode with Laura, the first time sex case. And they were like understaffed. They really needed help. So rather than just sit around, I remember on that case of going to the library with Katrina. We were looking up the past history of the area and all that stuff. So I fully remember Katrina, being there and working with her. And I remember all of that. But what blows my mind is this was the episode in which, I guess you can call it an attack, but it was when I had something grabbed my hand really hard in the basement of Laura Mooney's house, and something pushed me. But when I say push, I've explained this many times what it felt like. If you took like a giant medicine ball, like a large surface area, and you pushed it against my whole body, like that's what it felt like. And in the footage, you see me freaking out, where I'm just as angry as I am, geeked out. But what occurred, that was the first time I had ever been touched by anything. And to be completely honest, before that happened to me, when I would hear people say things like, something hit me or something scratched me, not that I would think people were lying. You have to understand, I believe that the mind has powers far greater than any of us can know or comprehend. And that's a whole other podcast episode as to why I believe that. But I believe the power of belief, the power of fear, the power of trauma, all of those things can lead people to believe they experienced something that perhaps they didn't. So I had always wondered, even my closest investigation partner at that time, Justin Holstein, who was the biggest skeptic I have ever investigated with. To this day, he claims that something slapped him in the head at Waverly Hills. Now, I believe him when he says it because I just know him. But it was still hard for me to believe that something physically did that versus he felt it and to him it did happen, if that makes sense. So I became, a big believer that there are things in the spiritual realm that can physically, push you and affect you and grab you and things like that in this moment. So this was a profound moment for me. But, and we'll play the footage here in a second, you'll see I look angry but also confused. And you first see me, by the way, the reason you only see, well, I'll come back to that. When you see this, you'll see me kind of leaning over and telling Ryan something grabbed my hand. That was when I was walking away from him, and he was a good distance behind me. So I just kind of jumped and turned around. And then you'll see him kind of saying, calm down, that type of thing. And he kind of turns away, and then his camera barely catches what happens to me, and you'll see me holding my hand above my face. That was right after I had that push, and it felt like it was against my whole body, just all of it. So just as a natural reaction, I'm blocking my eyes, I'm blocking my face, just as a natural reaction. And then you hear him yell, "Don't go in there," and you see me, kind of pissed off, and I'm just spouting out things. And I don't really know where I'm walking at that point. And then you'll see me leaning over, staring at the ground, and he's saying, "Are you okay?" What was going on there is also something that I never really fully believed was possible. That's what they call diabolical confusion. And that is supposedly when a spirit or an entity or a demon or something basically either makes contact with you or passes through you or comes in contact with your body physically, that it jars all of your senses. And you can't think straight, and your vision becomes blurred, and you can't really hear. And that's exactly what happened. I could make out where a doorway was. So I was trying to walk away from where I was. But I was very angry at the time as well. So I just knew I wanted to get away from that area. And I was angry because I mean, listen, there was nothing that I can do to whatever this was. I can't see it. I could, sense that it's around, like intuition wise. But I mean, what am I going to do? So it's kind of like if you got in a fight and somebody was pushing you or hitting you and you couldn't see him anywhere. You just feel completely defenseless. And I guess in times of fight or flight, my tendency is more, to fight than it is to flight. So I'm angry and you see me swearing and walking away, and then you see me leaning over. I'm leaning over because I'm just trying to get my senses about me. I can't really make out what Ryan's saying. I can't fully see where I'm going, in which I walked into this room. You hear Ryan go, "Don't go in there." That was a room with a bunch of blades, like gardening blades, and everything was hanging on the wall. So it's like the worst room I could have went into. And the other way was the stairs out of there. And then at the very end of this clip, you see me at the top of the stairs going outside. Once my wits came to me, I was like, I need a break. Like, seriously, I need to go figure out if I want to do this. Because I was freaked out. I was admittedly freaked out. This had never happened to me before. And, he says, "Can I film?" And at that time, I just didn't want to be filmed. I didn't feel safe. I didn't feel like I wanted to be documented. I didn't feel like I was just like, "Hey, just shut this up. I don't feel good right now." And so we didn't. Now, it's also important to note, and this is real important to this potential, like I said, I don't know if you call it a Mandela Effect or if you would call it a multiverse or experience or a string theory experience. I don't know, because I remember every single thing about going there. The reason that there were handheld footage of Ryan and I is because we were there before the crew was there. It was just me and him holding our cameras. And I mean, I remember going there with him. I remember stopping to get hot chocolate. I remember getting there and me expressing on the way there that I had some doubts about this case. And I thought there was a bit of acting going on with Laura. I'm just being honest as to how I felt before, in which Ryan was assuring me that there was something very real there. And, I was probably being more, kind of lighthearted about it to a degree. Because a lot of times going into these cases, you got to use, laughter as a weapon, as a shield. And you got, sometimes, you'll make these interpersonal jokes that are just, certainly, sometimes it gets bad, but it's just meant to use laughter like as a weapon. And he was showing me through different places of the house before that where things had happened. And he had taken me into this one bathroom area, and he was like, "Yeah, she was scratched here," and we're just moving like, all along through the place. And then he finally says, I said, "Well, take me to the darkest place here, the most terrifying place here." And we go downstairs, and he leads the way, and he says, "You ready for this?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And I walk in, and right after I walk in, I mean, like immediately, that's where this footage is. And this is the event that I just explained. Here it is. Check it out.
You love basements, right?
This is hardcore, dog. Holy shit. See, dude? It's already here. Me and you.
Go with your gut. Where do you feel it?
Honestly, all around us, bro. Like, I don't feel like it's a person standing in a corner. I mean, I just think, oh, me!
Whoa, Chad. Calm down.
Something down. Just grabbed my hand. Like, grabbed my fucking hand.
You alright, Chad?
Me.
Alright.
Right, I just got pushed.
No, right now?
Yes.
Alright, calm down.
Me.
Alright, don't go in there.
Mother.
Okay, calm down. You cool?
I'm cool.
Alright. Talk to me, Chad. What's going on?
We need to get ready, dude. This is not out, Ryan.
I know.
I'm a 300-pound man, and that thing just shoved me against that beam out there. I need to get outside right now.
Alright, we'll come with. Mind if I film or do you want me to turn it off?
Turn it off.
Okay, there we go. So, yeah, it's still weird watching that. That was such an overwhelmingly intense moment of my life in general, period. That was really strange. But anyways, what am I talking about as far as the Mandela Effect or the potential multiverse effect or whatever it was that still blows my mind to this day? Like I said, when I was talking to Ryan about a year ago, out of the blue, he says to me, "Hey, by the way, you want to know something that blew my mind?" And I'm like, "What?" And he said, "Katrina told me she was down there with us the whole time, and that when this happened, she ran out and hit her head on the top of the door leading up to the stairs and like cut herself and like collapsed on the stairs and was yelling for us, and we never came." And I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah." And he was saying she was down there with us and she watched everything. Like, she watched you get pushed, she watched all this stuff, and she ran out. And I am telling you guys, in my world, in my experience, I have zero memory of Katrina Weidman being with us. Not in the drive there, not in the pre-walk around, not during the event, not after the event. And I definitely had no idea she was hurt. I had no idea she was yelling for us. I have no idea what he's talking about. And the first time, Ryan told me that after the podcast, we got off the phone, and I discussed this with him a long time. We probably talked about it for like a half hour. I was like, "What in the fuck are you talking about?" He's like, "Yeah, I don't have that memory either." I'm like, "Wait a minute, she was down there with us?" He's like, "Yes. She says she was in there." Now, let me be clear. I 100% know for a fact that Katrina's not lying. I mean, she believes everything she's saying. And perhaps in her reality, she was there. And there's no way that I think she's making anything up. I think she experienced things exactly how she experienced them. And I say that just because I know her to be an exceptionally honest person and just an incredible human being, period. So there's no way that she would make any of that up. But what's crazy to me and what I can't get past, and I don't have any of the original tapes because they were all sent back to production, but on this footage that you guys just saw, that's not even the edit that they used in the actual episode. That's a much longer one. And I've looked at this a million times. I don't hear Katrina. I don't see Katrina. I didn't before. I didn't after. When we went all the way up the stairs and outside, I have questions like, if she was yelling for us, why don't we hear her yell? Like, why? Never in a million years would we be like, "Oh, well, Katrina needs us, well, fuck her." Like, we would never be like, I'm like, nothing about that makes sense. And even when I went outside with Ryan and talked to him, when he said, "Do you want to record us?" and I said, "No," we ended up walking around the front of the house, and we ended up having a long conversation in front of the streetlight where the snow was falling. And I remember in my head of Katrina and all of them in my world, the way I experienced it, they all showed up with production shortly after. And I remember we had this kind of like PRS type meeting. Ryan would do this where he'd kind of get everybody together. And I remember explaining to them what had happened to me down there and why I thought it was serious, like really serious. But, so yeah, I have no idea what Katrina is talking about, which is really hard for me to figure this out because, again, I know if she says it, and she does, so I know she experienced it. I just didn't. And my only thought this whole time is that diabolical confusion that I had. I mean, does that have the ability to knock some form of memory out of your head or something, because that was truly bizarre. Like, I didn't know Ryan yelled at me, "Don't go in there," until I watched the footage. I heard like Charlie Brown's teacher, like, wah, wah, wah. That's what I heard at that time. And so if she was yelling for me or yelling for Ryan or just yelling help, I mean, maybe I didn't hear it because of that, but he would have. And why wasn't this a memory for either of us? It's super weird. You know, when I first heard about Mandela effects, I honestly just chalked it up to people just have a poor memory. But there are some weird ones. There are things where it's like, did someone experience a different reality? The mirror on the wall and then the magic mirror on the wall. I mean, that one's super weird. And of course, the Luke, "I am your father" versus the "No, I am your father." Like, that's super weird because I've seen Star Wars 1,000 times. And those two stuck with me as really weird. But even then I was like, well, maybe it's just people have shit memories. And maybe childhood memories are just bad. And I'm sure in the case of most of those, that's exactly what it is. But things get weird when you start really digging into things like string theory and the mathematical potential of a multiverse and things like that, of different realities going on at the same time. Which brings me to another case on Paranormal State where I experienced this in real time. And yeah, oddly enough, it was with Katrina. It was on the Glove I Am Too case. Now that was a weird one too, because when I showed up, I was just supposed to direct the episode. And right when I landed, I heard the shoot's going to be canceled. That the husband was saying, "No go. Not going to happen." He didn't trust anybody. He thought that the first episode was all staged and had to be staged and all this stuff. He just didn't trust anybody. And then I don't think he noticed that I was there, because when I finally saw him, I remembered on the first episode, he had talked to me a couple times and we got along well, for whatever reason. And I remember I finally saw him walk out the front door, and he looked down and saw me. And the next thing I know, it was either Ryan or one of the producers said, I don't know, a producer told me that he wanted to speak with me, and then Ryan came and told me the same. And I was like, okay, why does he want to talk to me? And they're like, he just said he wants to talk to you. And for whatever reason, he just felt like I was going to shoot him straight, which, obviously I would. And he was asking me about, and this is all relevant to the story I'm going to tell you here in a second, and he was asking me about, the first time around with the lights exploding and, the handprint, all that stuff. And he was like, so none of that was planned, man. And I'm like, planned as far as what? And he was like when the lights were blown, because he was in the room with me when the lights started exploding above my head. And I'm like, bro, no. What do you think how would we even do that? Just make production lights? Those were safety production lights that just started exploding. And he, look, I think he could tell that I was being honest with him. I was like, hey, man, we do not fake shit. And I explained to him that I wouldn't be involved with any investigation if we were faking stuff. And that from a investigation, capture evidence standpoint, nothing was faked. And we ended up getting involved in like a 45-minute conversation that started getting kind of weird, because he was starting to talk about some personal stuff with his marriage and stuff. And I don't want to repeat it, just out of respect for him as a man. And what he finally came to is that, okay, I trust that you're a good guy, and I don't think you'd hang out with, bad people, I guess. That's where he was kind of left off. So he said, we can do this. But I asked him on several occasions, why is it that you believe so hard that we would come in and fake stuff when your wife and your kids are the ones that are saying things are happening. Like, we just confirmed what they've been saying, and their stories are way bigger than anything we experienced. I mean, they had like stories of like couches flying and shit like that, like crazy stuff. And he said, that's just it, man. I don't experience it. I'm like, what? And he was like, neither does my boy. And because he had daughters and a son. And he said, my son and I don't experience anything. He was like, I have never experienced personally anything. He's like, out of everything, it's always around my wife and the kids. And they were struggling with this. They were going through a rough time. And he was like, how can you explain that? And I was honest with him. I said, I cannot explain that. I don't know. You know, you're right. If you're in a room and something happens, it should be visible to all people. You know, I mean, if regardless of your beliefs, if you're in a room and a couch flies across, that the couch flew across the room, right? Regardless of what you think or believe. So I was honest with him. I told him, you know, I don't know. So we had this investigation, and the first time around, I was just directing. And sometimes when I would direct, I would feel comfortable enough with the way the shoot was going to infuse myself into the dead time. Because that's just, you know, that's late nights, the last thing we do on both nights. And then there's a reveal on day 3. But, and sometimes I don't. You know, I would, if there's times where I feel like this is going really good and they've already captured great evidence and the case is, you know, unfolding, you know, I don't want to force myself into it and become, you know, kind of like a new spoke on the wheel that's unneeded. But in this one, I remember by the time we got to the first night, I felt like if I don't investigate, I felt like he would think something was up, because that's how he came to know me, was an investigator on the first case. And he didn't know the difference between directing, producing, or whatever, you know? So I thought he would get weird and be like, well, why is he not doing the investigating now? And all these people are. And we kind of give him an excuse to blame something on people if things went weird. But during that investigation, there was a litany of things that were bizarre. Really, really bizarre stuff. Including our audio guy damn near quitting because he got touched and shooken around, which was never on the episode, and that was wild too. But I ended up investigating with Katrina, and I will never forget this because, again, as it was happening, I was like, what am I experiencing? We were both just sitting in this empty room, the same room where the lights exploded. We were just sitting in there, and I remember all of a sudden, Katrina was like, what is that? And I'm like, what? It's like, you don't hear that? I heard nothing. And all of a sudden, she jumps up and she's like, super animated. And she was like, oh my God. I'm like, what? And she's like, you don't hear that. I'm like, what are you talking about? There was nothing going on. I heard nothing. And she was really animated about what she was hearing. And in the moment, I was just like, man, I don't know what is in the air or what's in the water or what's going on, but this is strange. Well, this is super. I don't know how much, I don't know if the episode used this or not. I'd have to go rewatch it because it took a lot of explaining to understand. But it was super important, but we did explain it to the husband because it helped make a lot of things make sense. But what was weird about that is I was sitting next to Katrina, and in front of us, our cameras, we each had a camera that was recording. They were side by side, recording at the same time. When we reviewed the tapes, what's crazy is all the footsteps she was talking about on her camera, which was right in front of her where she was sitting, were clearly audible. I could hear everything she was talking about. And it wasn't quiet. Like, it was loud. You could hear it. It was like someone was stomping around the room. I mean, not like stomping as hard as they can to the ground, but you can hear solid footsteps circling us. But on my camera, which was right in front of me, you couldn't hear anything. You couldn't hear anything. And to this day, it's one of the most puzzling, perplexing things that I've never, ever been able to understand. And I thought about this the second Ryan brought up this event in the IM6 case, where once again involving Katrina, where there was a separate reality that went on from the one that I remember. And in the Glove Part 2, that was a separate reality that I was experiencing while she was. In her reality, there were footsteps circling us. And on her recorder that was in front of her, this was documented. In my reality, I heard nothing, had no idea what she was talking about, and on my recorder, none of the footsteps were audible. Explain that shit. I mean, I have no idea what happened. And when the Mandela Effect thing started becoming big, and then, of course, the whole Marvel universe went nuts on their, multiverse, and then I looked into that and found that it's, basically a string theory concept, and I just started, see, the thing is that I believe that mankind knows next to nothing about how the universe works and dimensions and things like that. And I don't know enough to say that's what it is, that's what it was. I have no idea. But what I know is in both of those scenarios, it makes absolutely no sense to me what happened. I do not remember Katrina being anywhere near us during IM6 for a long time before that event, during that event, or after that event. I have zero memory of her. And the footage that I have that you just saw shows that she wasn't there. Not during those clips. But I want to say this again. I know in her experience she was, because I know her. And I believe everything she would tell me. I mean, she's an amazing, amazing person. And extremely honest. And then the second experience, again, had I not had the two cameras, it would be so easy to call someone crazy. And this is my point, that we ended up sharing this with the husband on that case. And I said, listen, I don't know what you have or haven't experienced or why, but I can show you an example where Katrina experienced something real that was documented. And I was sitting right next to her. And I did not experience it. And it was not documented on my camera, which was sitting right next to her. And they were the same camera models. And I remember that was profound to him. He was like, you're kidding me. And I go, no. So perhaps the reason that you guys are fighting about this is because you're both right. She's saying these are real things that are happening. And she's saying, I'm experiencing them. And you're saying, but I'm not. It's not that she's bullshitting you or that you're being mean to her. It's that you're both right. Yeah, it was a wild, wild case. I would love to know what you guys think about this. Leave me your thoughts in the comments below. And I will be back very soon with more. All the best.